cycle of like an algae bloom. So as you can see right here in the bottom, that's this, oh sorry, that's the cyst. And the cyst, what happens is that they lay dormant on the ocean floor and then buried in sediment. And if it's undisturbed by physical or natural forces, they stay the way. But when oxygen is presented as well as light, it produces hermination. And if conditions are right, that's the second step. So up here you can see how a cyst looks when it's herminated. So only during certain times of the year with warm temperatures and increased light, they stimulate hermination. So the cyst breaks open and a swimming cell emerges. The cell reproduced by simple divisions, and it will hatch from a few days. And as you can see in number 3, if the conditions are right and remain optimal, cells will continue to divide, reproducing exponentially. For example, from 2 to 4 to 8. A single cell could produce several hundred cells within a couple of weeks. If other single cells reproduce similarly, then toxicity in cellfish may occur. That in this case, it did occur. And that is called, the cell is called vegetative cell. And then on step 4 and 5, happens what is called gametes and zygotes. So when nutrients are gone, growth stops and gametes are formed. As you can see, this a gamete is when they both unite. And 2 gametes join to 1 cell. And that's where zygote comes. In which develops in a cyst. It falls into the bottom of the ocean and capable of hermination the following years. So that's how they reproduce, and that's the life cycle. As you can see, it's a bit complicated, but it doesn't have that many steps. And at the end of the day, that's how they reproduce themselves. And then next page is, why is it bad? So what does it produce? So now we're talking about domic acid. That is the toxin, the neurotoxin that algae bloom has, and that makes it bad. So the bloom is produced high concentrations of domic acid, leading to increased standing and illness. And then, what is domic acid? Domic acid is produced by the algae that is called Pseudonychia during harmful algae blooms. The neurotoxin accumulates in small fish like sardines and anchovies, and it can it can accumulate in seafish as well, like in shellfish as was lobster, shrimp, snails, and all of that. And then for marine mammals like sea lions and dolphins, they start to eat them, and that's why they get sick. So here on the corner, you can see a head extended backwards, foaming at the mouth, and that's a sea lion. So that's one of the steps that happens when they are intoxicated. And the final step is domic acid. That's the final step. It gets to their brain and they die. So how is it produced? The microscopic plants like planktons rapidly multiply, as I showed you in the life cycle, and form large concentrations in the water. As you can see in the picture on the bottom, there you can see that it's a really it's a very large concentration for the water. So as you can see, it's all like really together. You cannot even see the sand. And then eutrophication occurs under certain environmental conditions like climate changes. Water becomes warm and too much salinity and harsh chemicals. Fertilizers, sewage, and agriculture runoffs. So how does that happen in San Diego? So basically, I put a picture in the corner where you can see where Tijuana is. That's like really down in the corner. And Tijuana throws all of the sewage down to the to the ocean, yeah. And with the waves and all of that, it basically goes to like Chula Vista, San Diego, Del Mar, all of those places. So they're all contaminated with sewage and with algae bloom. And I recently went to the beach to see if they had some of the warnings, and they do, but people don't tend to care. And it makes the algae bloom grow faster because it's rich in nitrogen and phosphorus that are perfect nutrition for the algae blooms. And they act like fertilizers for algae, allowing them to grow and reproduce at accelerated rates. And it is actually as well bad for humans, not just for animals. For animals, you just get to like die, and for humans, we get like sick. But it's really, really affecting. And yeah.
Hi, so I'm going to be talking about algae bloom and biology. My name is Leslie, and I'm part of the project as well. So one thing I'm going to be talking about is going to be the genetic predictors of algae bloom. So the scientists at Scripps Institution of Oceanography have discovered specific genes in Pseudonecia algae that act like warning lights for toxic blooms. When genes like DABA and SIT1 become active, it signals that domoic acid production is likely. This innovation enables researchers to detect and prepare for harmful algae blooms in advance, buying crucial time to protect marine life and public health. So basically, this is a new project that they came up with to try to prevent the harm that algae bloom can cause to marine life, since it can be killing marine animals. So this basically helps them try and predict and prevent that from happening. So domoic acid in marine mammals. Recent studies show that stranded dolphins and sea lions near San Diego often carry high levels of domoic acid, a potent neurotoxin produced by some algae. These animals, especially those feeding on anchovies, sardines, absorb the toxin through their diet. This biomagnification reveals how toxic blooms ripple through the food web, affecting top predictors and signaling ecosystem distress. So basically, domoic acid, this is what's found in the algae bloom and what the algae bloom creates. And what this does is this ends up going into their food, and then intoxicating them, which causes them to die. Recently, it has been shown that it's starting to affect humans as well because of how much it's mutating due to pollution. So that's also a cause. Machine learning predicts bloom events. New machine learning tools are being used to predict when and where algae blooms will strike by analyzing patterns in temperature, salinity, and nutrient levels. Models like Bagnan and SVM KMN help scientists forecast blooms before they occur. These predictive systems are vital for early warning and prevention, helping safeguard fisheries, beaches, and ocean wildlife. So essentially, this is kind of similar to what I was first talking about, except this is a little bit different. So it essentially does the same thing. This is also something very, very new, that they're still trying to perfect. There's a lot of research being done in this section as well, and basically it's just to help keep everybody safe and make sure that it's not overproducing and trying to prevent that overproduction that causes that acid to be made. Microbial shifts during blooms. So during large bloom events, the tiny bacterial communities in the water undergo drastic changes. Some microbes thrive while others vanish, and the overall water chemistry shifts, often leading to dangerously low oxygen levels. These shifts can kill fish and vertebrates, highlighting how algal blooms disrupt life at the microbial level and beyond. So this is essentially explaining how when this dramatic shifts in temperature or waste can affect algae blooms so drastically, even by 5% of a change can affect them very drastically since they're so susceptible to change. So basically, when the waters get warmer or when there's an overproduction of waste, or for example the LA fires, that was a huge contributor to why algae blooms are now overproducing, as well as the sewage from Tijuana, which all of that it's like the perfect environment for algae bloom to create, especially since we're now going into the summer. It's the perfect environment for it to thrive and multiply and even mutate. Marine mammal strandings and toxins. Toxic blooms along the California coast have led to more frequent dolphin and seal strandings. When marine mammals ingest high doses of domoic acid, it can cause seizures, brain damage, and death. Rescue organizations are now partnering with researchers to track toxin exposure in stranded animals, offering a better understanding of the bloom wildlife connection. So this right now is very huge, especially with SeaWorld in the zoo. They're partnering right now, actually, matter of fact, to be able to help with this, because right now they're seeing a huge increase of marine life mammals. Even seagulls are starting to get affected by this, since they eat the fish. They're also getting intoxicated with this domoic toxin from the algae. So because of this, there's a lot of life dying in the ocean. A lot of seals and a lot of dolphins are coming up sick. So that's also a thing. What triggers algae to make toxins? So not all algae makes this toxin, but some do. Studies show that when nutrients like iron or silica become scarce, some algae start producing toxins like domoic acid as a survival strategy. The chemical response gives them a competitive edge, but it also turns water into a hazard zone for marine life and also as for humans. So, specifically with bloom algae, what really makes that algae produce that domoic acid is nutrient pollution, as well as the high rise in temperature and pollution in general. So with nutrient pollution, what does that entail? That one is the sewage and the waste that's being brought down from Tijuana into our oceans. And then for the other type of pollution, the environmental pollution, that would be the trash, all the waste from the LA fires also being in the mix. And also the rise in temperature is a huge factor as to why this is happening. So with all those mixed together, it's allowing this bloom algae to overproduce and to create a huge amount of that toxin. So with so much pollution and so many factors going into this, it's allowing the domoic acid to overproduce and be essentially even more harmful than it used to be. Before it wasn't as harmful, but recently, as of this year, it's showing way more harmful than in prior years. So last but not least, AI-powered bloom monitoring. This is very, very new. So what this is AI and big data are changing how we monitor the oceans. Satellite image, ocean sensors, and weather data feed into AI systems that detect and assess the severity of algal blooms in real life. These technologies help researchers and agencies track bloom movement, predict wildlife exposure, and guide safety decisions on seafood and swimming. So this essentially is a more advanced way of seeing where all this algae bloom is and if it has a toxin and how high the toxin levels are, and the safety for everybody involved, as well as the marine animals, as well as us, because currently there is a warning on shellfish due to this. So it's best if we don't eat shellfish that are from San Diego at the moment, simply just because of how much algae bloom is in the oceans and how much domoic acid it's producing and how it's affecting absolutely everything. Yeah, so that's all for my part. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I am Tania Olvera, and I am going to be talking about the algae bloom in biology. Genetic regulation of toxin biosynthesis in bloom-forming algae. Certain algae species possess specific algae clusters responsible for the synthesis of protein toxins. For instance, the diatom Pseudonetia produces domoic acid, a neurotoxin, through the expression of a DAB gene cluster. Similarly to cyanobacteria, like microsynthesis via the MCY gene cluster. These biosynthetic pathways are tightly regulated and can be influenced by environmental factors such as nutrient availability and light intensity. The presence and expression levels of these genes are critical in determining the toxicity of algae blooms. Reactive oxygen species ROS as defense and competitive tools. Algae produces a reactive oxygen species ROS, including superoxide radicals and hydrogen peroxide as both metabolic byproducts and deliberate defense mechanisms. These ROS can damage the cellular components of competing organisms, inhibit photosynthesis in neighboring algae, and deter grazers. Moreover, ROS can enhance the toxicity of algae exudants by oxidizing them, leading to increased harmful effects on marine life. This oxidative strategy provides algae with a competitive advantage in bloom formation and maintenance. Microbial interactions and organic nitrogen utilization. Recent studies have highlighted the role of microbial communities associated with cyanobacteria in facilitating the utilization of organic nitrogen sources, such as amino acids and urea. These interactions enable cyanobacteria like microcysts and to thrive even when organic nitrogen is scarce. The microbiome aids in nutrient cycling and can influence the production of cytotoxins and affecting the dynamics and toxicity of the algae bloom. Cell-to-cell communication and coordinated bloom behavior. Algae cells communicate through chemical signaling with the phytosphere, the microenvironment surrounding each cell. These signals can trigger physiological changes such as chain formation, entering into resting states, and introduction of toxin biosynthesis. Some signals are packaged with extracellular vesicles, facilitating targeted exchange of information and coordination among cells. This communication enables single-celled organisms to exhibit multicellular-like behavior, coordinating responses to environmental cues and contributing to the bloom formation. Environmental triggers and genetic responses in bloom dynamics. Environmental factors such as nutrients, loading, light availability, water temperature, and salinity play pivotal roles in the formation and presence of HABs. Algae responds to the cues through genetic regulation, altering gene expressions to optimize growth and toxin production. For example, changes in nitrogen to phosphorus ratios can influence the expression of toxins biosynthesis genes, affecting the composition of toxicity of the blooms. Viral interactions and the viral shunt in algae populations. Viruses infecting algae can cause cell lysis, releasing organic matter into the aquatic environment. This process, also known as the viral shunt, diverts carbon and nutrients from hydrotrophic levels to the microbial loop. Influencing nutrient cycling and bloom dynamics, viral infections can also impact the genetic composition of algae populations, potentially affecting their susceptibility to future infections and environmental stressors. 35% of hydrogen peroxide kills toxic bloom. It breaks the colonies of algae into individual cells and they start to die. HABs is the harmful algae bloom. These neurotoxins are often associated with HABs, which can discolor the water and cause the animals to die. Neurotoxins released by algae bloom is stomonic acid produced by the diatom pseudonocotia, causes the erratic behavior and even permanent brain damage due to the neurotoxins that damages the brain cells, particularly the hippocampus. The effects that causes the anesthetic shellfish poisoning ASP in humans characterized by gastrointestinal problems, neurological issues like confusion and disorientation, and in severe cases, permanent short-term or long memory loss. The algae bloom are reproducing faster due to the increased temperatures that boost their metabolic rate, leading to faster growth and reproduction rates. As the temperature rises, the biochemical process involved in the photosynthesis and respiration are enhanced, leading to the faster growth and reproduction. So in conclusion, the rapid metabolic rate is due to the photosynthetic activity, which fuels growth, and it enables the faster cell division. The following is a list of all the sources where all the information was